What's the most fucked up acid you've walked into? Friend got acid faced at a party, was put to bed to sleep it off. Lots of us stayed there as to not drive drunk. Well, when I got up to use the bathroom, I found aforementioned passed out dude sitting on the toilet with the lid down. He had his DCK in his hand and was sitting in a puddle of acid. At some point in the night he got up to take a acid and decided to jerk off. He was forever known as Poop and Jerk from that point on. Was with my friend during our first year of college. We were roommates and he happened to be 21. We were walking to a liquor store to pick up some alcohol. As soon as we get across the street and about 40 feet from the building, a car completely runs over two people. One person went up flying I deck how high and the other guy kinda went airborne and to side, and I could hear sounds I never want to hear again. People run over and start helping them as we stare in disbelief. There was already too many people trying to help, so we went on and got the alcohol and came back outside and see two sets of paramedics attempting CPR. People are screaming. I could see one set of paramedics get up and you could tell by their body language the person was dead. Not sure about the other person, but I believe they both shared the same fate. We went back in and got more alcohol, but I was still unable to forget that night. Didn't walk into it so much as it walked into me. On a night out in another town waiting for a taxi home, random drunk lass walks around the corner from the strip to where the taxi rank is, lifts her dress up, bends over and just sprays diarrhea up the wall in front of about 20 people, pulls her dress down, and walks right into another club. The range was impressive, if nothing else. This summer I was leaving work in a rural area in New York. Got to the main highway, let a motorcycle pass, turned and started down the road behind him. He was going fast. Anyone who lives in rural New York can probably guess where this is going. I see a deer bolting across a field ahead of us. Surely this man on the motorcycle sees the deer. Hopefully the deer hears the motorcycle. Nope. The deer runs into the road. The guy wipes out. The deer miraculously jumps over the skidding bike and runs off. I stop my car, start running to the guy, while I'm dialing 911. There's a thin layer of what used to be his foot spread out over the road. He's screaming for me to get the bike off him. Other cars are stopping, and we pull the bike off him, while I'm trying to get an ambulance. His hand was completely fucked. His foot was pinned under his bike. His shoe came off, and it was shaved down to the bone. He took off his helmet, and we saw he was probably close to 80. He was chewing on a toothpick, and it went through his lip. We wrapped a belt around his leg to stop the bleeding. The ambulance arrived. They took him, and I never heard what happened to him. He was wearing jeans, a leather jacket, no gloves, and loafers. The bloody skid mark that used to be his foot was there for days until it rained and got washed away. Back in college, a bunch of friends lived in adjacent apartments in a building, and we had the unwritten rule that if the front door was unlocked, come on in. One evening, I walked into one of the apartments and saw the following. The room was heavily filled with smoke. Dude, where's my car was blasting on the TV. A dog barking like crazy. No dogs were allowed in the apartment. Two men were tied to a metal frame chair, one sitting in the other's lap and being flogged. 5 people were standing around watching. The sounds of even more people coming from down the hallway. I simply turned around and went home. Didn't want to know. Woke up a Sunday morning. Felt like being a good kid and to make my parents some coffee and toast. I get downstairs and get to making a little breakfast tray and go into our room. To find them going at it, I made eye contact with my dad for a solid 5 seconds before setting down the tray and walking out. I don't make breakfast anymore. In my junior year of college, my best friend and I were helping pack up his girlfriend's room at the end of the semester when I heard some weird noise coming from the bathroom. It kind of sounded like someone having sex, so I thought it would be hilarious to kick the door open and surprise them. It turned out the cleaning woman was on the floor having a seizure. I was hanging out with this girl I was trying to date while her mom was served divorce papers. This happened to someone I know in a different hospital. The hospital had a relatively small ICU, a total of somewhere between 6 and 10 beds. A patient was admitted to the ICU for an out of control infection that happened after he went swimming in a lake a week or so after discharge from a previous hospital. Admit when he had managed to catch his pants on fire. He had severe burns covering his entire lower body, front to back, and ankles to waist, testicles, penis, and all. Swimming in unclean water after something like this is a recipe for disaster. He was diagnosed with necrotizing fasciitis and had recently undergone a surgical debridement of his lower body, and the nurses and neighbors in the ICU were constantly complaining of the odor coming from his room due to the necrotic skin he had. He was a pretty pleasant guy in a bad situation, but he had the most frustratingly loud and obnoxious, huge and trashy girlfriend that was constantly harassing the nurses and medical staff. My buddy, a physical therapist assistant, walked into the patient's room to get him moving for the day and wasn't really paying attention to the sounds behind the door curtain into the patient's room. He pulled back the curtains to see the very large trashy girlfriend riding the patient. In the process they had managed to remove all of the patient's lower body dressings, which my buddy stated were heavily saturated with bloody drainage and draping off of either side of the bed. He said he remembered being hit by the smell first, but his jaw dropped when he saw her BTT covered in slimy drainage and clotting blood. From what he remembered, that guy died a week later from infection-related complications. He says he still pictures what he saw on that day every time he gets a patient in that room in the ICU. Edit. Thanks for my first gold. Woohoo. Ran at a major university in Canada. Girl is locked out of her room and asks for one of us to get into her room. Not out of the norm in our building. She was in a double room and could not get a hold of her roommate. I go up with another and knock twice without any noise. Open the door to her roommate and 3 guys in a 4-way. She takes the CCK out of her mouth and says, "I was a little busy to answer." I just shut the door and found an empty room with bedding for the shocked student who was a devout Catholic, as she told me many a time as we walked to the other room.